Chinese manufacturers allegedly exposing the truth behind the production of luxury goods. Tell us more about that.
In the past more than 30 years, we have been the OEM factory for most of the luxury brands around the world. Gucci, Prada, Coach, Louis Vuitton.
Who are the suppliers behind Lululemon? Number 1, Xianglong Apparel. Who supplies the most yoga suits?
Today, the world's most exclusive luxury brands are being sold like streetwear, and the factory gate is none other than China.
Trump hit China with a 245% tariff. He called it Liberation Day. Xi didn't answer with tariffs. He let factory owners sell directly 30,000 handbags for $1,400, $98 leggings for $5. All of it on TikTok, and Americans, they're not protesting. They're buying. They're sharing. They're switching sides, one swipe at a time. And it's not just trade, it's a war of narratives. And China didn't need tariffs. It just needed the algorithm. And here's the twist. China didn't seize the market. US consumers opened the door. What's really happening? What we're witnessing isn't just a shift in shopping behavior. It's a fundamental recalibration of consumer psychology. For decades, American brands have relied on the illusion of exclusivity, prestige, and lifestyle storytelling to justify extraordinary markups. But platforms like Temu, DHgate, and Taobao aren't merely undercutting those prices. They're dismantling the very foundations upon which luxury brands were built. With every viral video comparing production costs to retail tags, the myth of the brand begins to unravel. These platforms are not just delivering cheaper products, they're delivering proof. Proof that value is a construct and brand loyalty, once a powerful tool of consumer control, is cracking under the weight of transparency. The idea that a $5 pair of leggings can look and feel indistinguishable from one that costs $98 doesn't just challenge margins, it erodes trust. And in the age of endless scrolling and viral exposés, trust is the most fragile asset a brand can hold. There's also a deeper geopolitical undercurrent to this disruption. While US policy focuses on tariffs and traditional levers of economic defense, these platforms are bypassing those mechanisms entirely. Not through loopholes, but through cultural fluency. They know that a well-shot factory video, shared at the right time by the right influencer, can undo years of brand marketing in seconds. And while Washington debates policy, the battlefield shifts beneath its feet, from ports and customs offices to Instagram reels and TikTok stitches. What makes this shift even more profound is its emotional appeal. Consumers aren't just saving money, they're feeling smarter. The irony is striking. In trying to protect domestic industries through tariffs, the US may have unintentionally accelerated their irrelevance. Because while tariffs can block goods, they can't block perception, and they can't regulate belief. And when belief shifts, the entire retail ecosystem begins to collapse from within, one factory tour at a time. What's unfolding on TikTok isn't a coincidence, it's an ecosystem. Behind each viral breakdown of a $34,000 bag or $98 leggings lies something far more strategic than mere entertainment. It's a soft power campaign engineered not with slogans or state messaging, but with content creators who are fluent in the language of trust. These influencers, often based in Chinese manufacturing hubs, don't need to declare political allegiance or economic motives. They only need to show how the stitching is done, show the raw material costs, show the identical factory lines producing goods that look and feel like high-end Western products, minus the logo. In doing so, they're not just lowering prices, they're eroding the mystique that Western brands have spent decades cultivating. This new wave of influence weaponizes transparency in a way traditional marketing can't compete with. It challenges the very architecture of value creation in the global economy. In this light, TikTok isn't just a social platform. It's a narrative infrastructure where the terms of global trade, cultural aspiration, and consumer identity are being rewritten, algorithmically, virally, and often invisibly. What makes this even more destabilizing for the West is the generational shift in perception. Millennials may have grown up with skepticism toward corporations, but Gen Z was born into a world of filters, sponsored content, and PR disasters. They don't just question authority, they expect to see behind the curtain. And TikTok grants that access at scale. More profoundly, this shift signals a breakdown of Western cultural export as a tool of economic dominance. For much of the 20th century, American and European brands didn't just sell goods, they sold ideals, freedom, aspiration, exclusivity. Now, those ideals are being deconstructed in real time by a generation that values authenticity over aspiration. Not through censorship, but through influence, TikTok has quietly redrawn the map of global persuasion. This isn't economic retaliation in the traditional sense. It's consumer mindset shift. China didn't respond to US tariffs with policy statements or WTO appeals. Instead, it launched something far more subtle and enduring: a war for perception. One TikTok at a time, it redefined the meaning of value, trust, and authenticity, not through state propaganda, but through the quiet authority of personal experience and consumer revelation. What was once abstract, supply chains, markup, brand equity, became viscerally real. Viewers weren't told what to believe, they were shown. For decades, American influence wasn't just built on military strength or economic scale, it was built on aspiration. The belief that to buy American was to buy into a better story. But now, that story is being reverse-engineered, fact-checked, and, in many cases, rejected. And perhaps the most sobering truth for US policymakers is this: the more they try to frame this battle in terms of tariffs and threats, the more they miss the point. Trump's so-called Liberation Day was meant to signal economic rebirth, a dramatic gesture to reassert control, punish Beijing, and reignite American manufacturing pride. Yet in a hyper-connected world, dominance isn't about who strikes first, it's about who adapts fastest. Beijing didn't respond with chest-beating declarations. It chose leverage points that few Americans had thought about until they failed. Rare earths weren't just strategic, they were essential. Without them, US chipmakers faltered, defense contractors stalled, and Washington, which once sought to weaponize tariffs, found itself paralyzed by minerals it no longer controlled. By cancelling Boeing orders and rewarding Airbus, Beijing didn't just make a purchase, it redrew the map of global aviation allegiance. At the consumer level, the impact was even more insidious. As US brands scrambled to justify their premiums, TikTok creators were pulling back the curtain. One stitch, one factory tour, one pricing expose at a time. For US corporations, the hit was brutal. Nvidia's $5.5 billion loss wasn't just a line item, it was a signal that in a world of retaliatory economics, no sector is sacred, not even tech, not even defense. Meanwhile, as China reduced its exposure to US treasuries, the global trust in the dollar began to slip. And that erosion, slow, psychological, systemic, is far more dangerous than any sudden crash, because it speaks to a deeper fracture, a world questioning whether the US financial system is still the unshakable pillar it once claimed to be. But perhaps the most symbolic casualty was American luxury itself. For decades, brand names like Coach, Michael Kors, and even high-fashion giants held cultural capital. Now, their aura is dissolving, not in courtrooms or policy circles, but in TikTok feeds and factory-sourced comparisons. What took decades to build was undone in months, not by knockoffs, but by knowledge, not by trade wars, but by trust shifts. And the most haunting truth of all, the same factories accused of counterfeiting are now showing their processes, flaunting their costs, and daring the world to judge. They invite viewers to compare stitch for stitch, thread for thread, then reveal the one ingredient missing: the markup. It's not the fake that's offensive, it's the price tag that suddenly looks like the lie. The deeper danger isn't in the replicas themselves, it's in the psychological contagion. And when that story spreads peer-to-peer, creator to follower, the damage bypasses every traditional defense. And once that belief is lost, even the strongest brands, built over decades, can crumble overnight under the weight of their own mythology. This is the new front line of global competition. Not supply chains, but storylines. While the US escalates its trade confrontation with a barrage of tariffs, other nations are choosing caution over loyalty. Beijing's refusal to retaliate wasn't weakness, it was a signal. Across the EU and ASEAN, similar patterns are emerging: hedging, hesitating, keeping doors open to both Washington and Beijing. The world is reading the room, and it's not betting on certainty from the US. Meanwhile, Chinese companies like Temu and Shein are not panicking. They're preparing, not just by bracing for tariffs, but by preemptively adapting, slashing prices, rerouting logistics, decentralizing supply chains. These are not the reactions of victims. They're the moves of players who understand that in a world ruled by consumer demand and digital virality, speed and flexibility matter more than protectionist walls. But the real story isn't in the apps, it's in the alliances. While the US focuses on economic confrontation, China is laying diplomatic foundations. Xi Jinping's first post-tariff visit wasn't to a superpower capital, it was to Hanoi. That choice wasn't logistical, it was symbolic. Vietnam represents more than a trading partner. It's a gateway to ASEAN, a region increasingly caught in the crossfire between US assertiveness and China's strategic patience. By deepening ties there, China signals its long game, a regional web of economic interdependence that bypasses traditional Western centers of power. And so, while Washington leans on legacy alliances, Beijing builds alternatives. Trade corridors are being redrawn, from railways connecting China to Europe through Central Asia to digital pipelines of commerce flowing through Southeast Asian ports. The old frameworks, the WTO, the TPP, even NAFTA, are starting to feel outdated, relics of a slower, more static world. In their place, fluid networks are emerging, where data, goods, and influence move not according to treaties, but according to trust and proximity. The most dangerous thing for the US isn't just that new corridors are forming, it's that old ones are fading without fanfare. One by one, countries are slipping into neutrality, not through defiance, but through disinterest. And in global politics, disinterest is the first symptom of irrelevance. When allies start watching from the sidelines and competitors begin planning 2 steps ahead, the question isn't whether the US can win this trade war. It's whether the rest of the world even wants to play. America fights with tariffs. If a 15-second TikTok clip can destroy a $30,000 price tag, if the next generation trusts a Chinese factory video more than a luxury ad, then who's really in control? Leave a comment. Was this a trade war or a trust collapse? And remember, the real battlefield isn't at the WTO. It's already in your phone.